Captain Jackson Reed's consciousness returned slowly, like swimming up from the depths of a dark ocean. His head pounded with the rhythm of damaged ship engines, and the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. The last thing he remembered was the brilliant flash of an energy weapon cutting through his fighter's hull during what should have been a routine cargo escort mission. Now he found himself in an opulent chamber that seemed carved from living crystal. Bioluminescent veins pulsed through the walls, casting shifting patterns of blue and violet light across surfaces that gleamed like polished obsidian. The air tasted of ozone and something floral he couldn't identify. This wasn't a prison cell. It was too beautiful, too luxurious. You're awake. Came a voice like liquid silver. Jackson's muscles tensed as he turned toward the sound. Standing in an archway that hadn't been there moments before was the most stunning being he had ever seen. She was humanoid, but clearly alien, with skin that shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue, depending on the light. Her hair cascaded in waves of silver white down to her waist, and her eyes were the color of distant, viewless whirling pools of cosmic dust and starlight. She wore robes that seemed to be made of the same living light as the walls. Her tall, graceful form like liquid starfire. Despite her beauty, there was something predatory in the way she moved, something that made Jackson's combat instincts scream warnings. "Who are you?" he demanded, testing the restraints he expected. To find, strangely, he wasn't bound. His body simply felt heavy, unresponsive. "I am Princess Zara Velthus of the Netherian Empire," she replied, stepping closer with fluid grace. "And you, Captain Reed, are exactly what I've been searching for." Jackson tried to stand but found his limbs wouldn't obey. "What did you do to me?" Zara's expression flickered with something that might have been regret. "A paralysis field. Temporary, I assure you. I needed you conscious, but cooperative for what comes next. If you think I'm going to help you with whatever scheme, it's not a request." She interrupted, her voice hardening from the folds of her robes. She withdrew a device that looked like a crown made of living metal, its surface crawling with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. "This is a neural bond circlet, a relic from the old empire. Once activated, it creates an unbreakable connection between two consciousness." Horror crept up Jackson's spine. "You're talking about mind control?" "No," Zara said, though her hands trembled slightly as she held the device. "A bond. We'll share thoughts, emotions, eventually even memories. But your will remains your own, as does mine. We'll simply be ... connected forever." "You're insane." Jackson fought against the paralysis with everything he had, managing only to twitch his fingers. "Why would you do this to a stranger?" "For the first time," Zara's composure cracked, her alien features twisted with pain and desperation. "Because in 3 days, I'm to be bonded to Lord Vex Thalon, a warlord who will use our union to claim my father's throne, all they have already promised to have me executed once he's consolidated power. This is my only escape. By enslaving someone else. By claiming a mate of my own choosing." The circlet flared brighter in her grip. "Netherian law is absolute. A bonded pair cannot be separated by any force, political or otherwise. If I arrive at my wedding already bonded, the contract becomes void." Jackson's tactical mind raced despite his fury. "And you picked a human because we're not part of your political games?" "Partly." Zara knelt beside the crystalline platform where he lay, her strange eyes meeting his. "But also because I've studied your species. Humans are ... remarkable, resilient, passionate. If I must share my mind with another for the rest of my life, I want it to be with someone worthy of that honor." "I didn't consent to this honor," Jackson growled. Zara's hand hesitated over his forehead, the circlet casting eerie shadows across both their faces. "I know, and I'll carry that guilt forever, but I won't die for my father's politics, and I won't let Thalon plunge our sector into war for his ambitions." Before Jackson could respond, she pressed the device against his temple. Lightning exploded behind his eyes, and he felt his consciousness expand, touching something alien yet achingly familiar. Through the connection, he felt her terror, her shame, her desperate hope, and, underneath it all, a core of steel that matched his own stubborn determination. When the light faded, matching marks glowed on both their necks' intricate patterns that pulsed with their synchronized heartbeats. "It's done," Zara whispered, and Jackson could feel her relief like his own. "You're mine now, Jackson Reed, and I am yours." The paralysis faded over the next hour, leaving Jackson with the disturbing ability to sense Zara's presence even when she wasn't in the room. It felt like having a second heartbeat, a whisper of alien thoughts at the edge of his consciousness. Every emotion she experienced echoed faintly in his mind: her guilt, her fear, her stubborn determination to see this through. "I can feel you trying to hate me," Zara said from the chamber's entrance. She had changed into simpler clothing, a fitted bodysuit that revealed more of her exotic alien form. "It's difficult to experience." Jackson was examining the room's walls, searching for weaknesses. "Then maybe you shouldn't have forced this connection on me." "Perhaps not." She approached slowly, like someone trying not to spook a dangerous animal. "But I can also feel that you understand why I did it. Your tactical mind is already analyzing my situation, finding the logic in my desperation." He couldn't deny it. Through their bond, he had glimpsed fragments of her memories, Thalan's cruel laughter as he described his plans for her, her father's cold dismissal of her protests. The way her own people looked at her as nothing more than a political tool to be used and discarded. "Understanding doesn't equal forgiveness," Jackson said. But the anger in his voice had lost its sharp edge. Zara settled onto a cushioned alcove, tucking her long legs beneath her. "Tell me about Earth. I want to understand the world that shaped you." "Why?" "Because if we're to be bound together, I should know the man I've claimed." She gestured to the space beside her. "Please. The bond is easier when we're close." Against his better judgment, Jackson found himself drawn to sit near her. The moment their shoulders touched, the constant low-level discomfort he hadn't even realized, he was feeling eased. Through their connection, he sensed her relief at the contact. "Earth isn't paradise," he began slowly. "Humanity spread to the stars because we're too stubborn to accept limitations, too curious to stay put. We fight constantly with each other, with aliens, with the universe itself. But we also love fiercely, protect what matters to us." As he spoke, Zara's alien eyes seemed to drink in every word. "You were a soldier before becoming a mercenary. Special forces. Lost too many friends to politics and bad orders." He studied her profile. "What about you? What was your life like before ... this?" "Caged," she said simply. "Trained to be the perfect princess, beautiful, educated, compliant. I learned 17 languages, studied xenobiology and interstellar law, mastered combat techniques I was never supposed to use, all in preparation for the day I'd be traded away to strengthen some alliance." Through their bond, Jackson felt the depth of her loneliness, decades of isolation despite being surrounded by courtiers and servants. "You've never been free." "Never." She turned to face him fully, and he was struck by the vulnerability in her expression. "That's why I chose you. Humans understand freedom. You fight for it, die for it. I need to learn what that means." Their conversation was interrupted by a subtle shift in the ship's vibration. Through the connection, Jackson felt Zara's spike of alarm before she spoke. "We're dropping out of hyperspace," she said, rising quickly. "We shouldn't be arriving at Haven Station for another 6 hours." The chamber's walls shimmered, becoming transparent to reveal the starfield outside. 3 massive warships hung in space before them, their hulls bearing the crimson insignia Jackson recognized from Zara's memories, Thalan's fleet. "How did they find us so quickly?" Zara breathed, her face pale. Through their bond, Jackson felt her terror and responded instinctively, moving to stand between her and the viewport. "Does it matter? What are our options?" "My ship is fast, but not armed for combat." She was already moving toward a control panel, her fingers dancing over alien interfaces. "I have maybe 20 minutes before they're in boarding range. Then we run. The hyperdrive needs time to recharge after an emergency drop." She spun to face him, her expression desperate. "Jackson, there's something else about the bond you should know. If one of us dies, the other follows within hours. We're truly connected now." The implications hit him like a physical blow. His survival was tied to hers, and hers to his. Stuck with each other whether he liked it or not. "Any weapons on this ship?" he asked, already shifting into tactical mode. "Some. But against 3 dreadnoughts, we're not fighting them." Jackson interrupted, his mind racing through possibilities. "We're buying time. Show me everything: ships, systems, emergency protocols, anything that might help." As Zara began explaining her vessel's capabilities, their bond carried more than just information. He felt her amazement at his quick adaptation, her growing respect for his tactical mind. And underneath that, something warmer, the first stirrings of attraction that had nothing to do with the forced connection between them, through their shared awareness. She felt his recognition of those emotions, and her cheeks darkened with an alien blush. The next hours transformed their relationship from captor and prisoner to partners in survival. Jackson's military training combined with Zara's intimate knowledge of her ship's systems created an escape plan that was equal parts brilliant and desperate. "The asteroid field beyond the second moon," Jackson said, pointing to the tactical display. "We can reach it, we can lose them in the debris." "The field is highly unstable," Zara warned, her fingers flying over the controls. "One wrong move, and we'll be crushed between shifting rocks. It's better than what Thalen has planned for us." Through their bond, Jackson had experienced glimpses of the warlord's cruelty, memories that made his own combat experiences seem tame. Zara's ship shuddered as the pursuing vessels opened fire, energy beams lancing through space around them. The Princess proved to be a skilled pilot, threading their craft between incoming shots with graceful precision. But the larger ships were gaining. "Hull breach in Sector 7, the ship's computer announced in melodic tones. "Automated systems are sealing it," Zara reported, though stress made her voice tight. Through their connection, Jackson felt her exhaustion. She had been pushing herself beyond normal limits. "Let me help," he said, moving to stand behind her pilot's seat. When his hands settled on her shoulders, the bond flared stronger, and suddenly he could sense the ship almost as clearly as she could. "How are you?" she began. "The neural link," Jackson realized. "It's not just connecting us, it's letting me interface with your technology." Together, they began working in perfect synchronization. Jackson's tactical instincts merged with Zara's technical knowledge, creating something greater than either could achieve alone. The ship responded to their combined will, dancing through the asteroid field with impossible precision. "They're falling back," Zara breathed, as the pursuing vessels were forced to reduce speed. "The field is too dangerous for ships that size." They found shelter in the shadow of a massive asteroid, its surface scarred by countless impacts. As the ship's systems powered down to minimal levels, hiding their signature, Jackson became aware of how close he and Zara had become during their escape. Her back was pressed against his chest, and he could feel the rapid beating of her dual hearts. "We did it," she whispered, turning in his arms to face him. The movement brought their faces inches apart. Through their bond, Jackson felt the shift in her emotions, relief transforming into something deeper, more primal. Her alien features were flushed with excitement and something else that made his pulse quicken. "Zara, ... he began, but she silenced him by pressing her lips to his. The kiss was electric. Literally, their bonded marks flared with light as their connection deepened. Through the link, he experienced her desire as his own, felt her wonder at the alien sensation of kissing a human. Her lips were softer than human lips, warmer, and they tasted of starlight and ozone. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "I'm sorry," Zara said, though her hands remained on his chest. "The bond makes everything more intense. Don't apologize." Jackson's voice was rougher than usual. "I wanted it to." Through their shared awareness, he let her feel the truth of that statement. The forced nature of their connection hadn't prevented genuine attraction from growing between them. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was brave, intelligent, and surprisingly vulnerable despite her royal upbringing. "This complicates things," she said, but she didn't move away. "Everything about this is complicated." His hands found her waist, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. But maybe that's not entirely bad. Zara's eyes widened. You're beginning to accept the bond. I'm beginning to accept you, he corrected. The bond. That's still something I'm working through. Before she could respond, the ship's proximity alarms chimed softly. On the display, they could see Thalan's vessels beginning a methodical search of the asteroid field. They're not giving up, Jackson observed. Thalan doesn't give up on anything he considers his. Zara's expression hardened. He'll tear this entire system apart to find me. Then we need allies. Jackson was already thinking ahead, planning their next moves. He said your people wouldn't accept the bond if they believed it was forced. What if we convinced them it was genuine? You mean pretend to be willing partners? Become willing partners? He cupped her alien face gently, thumb tracing the luminous markings that decorated her cheekbones. The attraction is real, Zara. The respect is growing. Maybe the bond just accelerated something that would have happened anyway. Through their connection, she felt the sincerity of his words, the way his initial anger had transformed into something far more complex. Her expression softened, and for the first time since taking him, she looked hopeful. There's a resistance movement, she said slowly. Nobles who oppose Thalan's rise to power. If we could reach them, we'd have an army. We'd have a chance. She stood, pulling him with her toward the ship's communication array. But first, we need to survive the next few hours. As they began composing messages to her hidden allies, their bond carried a new harmony to souls choosing to fight as one. 3 days later, Zara's ship limped into the hidden base of the Netherian Resistance, a hollowed out asteroid facility that had been disguised to look like empty space debris. During their journey, Jackson and Zara had grown closer, their bond deepening from forced connection to something approaching genuine partnership. Princess greeted Commander Kithrael, the resistance leader whose scarred face spoke of many battles against Thalan's forces. We received your transmission. The alliance you propose is unexpected. They stood in the base's central chamber, surrounded by warriors from a dozen different alien species, all united in their opposition to Thalan's expanding empire. Jackson noted the tactical positions, the weapons, the barely concealed desperation in their faces. These beings were losing their war. Desperate times require bold action, Zara replied, her royal bearing evident despite her simple clothing. Commander Ral, may I present Captain Jackson Reed of Earth, my bonded mate. The words still sent a complex mix of emotions through their connection. Zara's determination, her growing affection, and underneath it all, a current of guilt she couldn't entirely suppress. A human, Ral observed, his vertical pupils dilating as he studied Jackson. Unusual choice, Princess. But if the bond is genuine, it does void your betrothal contract. It is genuine, Jackson said firmly, moving closer to Zara. Their marks pulsed. In synchronization, visible proof of their connection. The question is whether you're willing to help us make it official in a way that stops Thalan permanently. Bold words from an off-worlder. One of the other commanders interjected. What? Do humans know of our customs or our wars? Through their bond, Jackson felt Zara's flash of irritation, but he remained calm. We know that tyrants are the same regardless of species, and we know how to fight them. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the resistance leaders agreed to help, partly from respect for Zara's position, partly from desperation. Thalan's forces were closing in on their hidden bases. They needed every advantage. That night, in the small quarters they'd been assigned, Zara sat at the room's single window, staring out at the stars. The artificial gravity and atmosphere felt strange to Jackson after days in space, but his attention was focused on the turmoil he sensed through their connection. Tell me what's wrong, he said, settling beside her. Commander Ral's aide pulled me aside earlier. She began, not meeting his eyes. She told me something I didn't know about the bonding circlet I used. Jackson waited, sensing her struggle through their link. It's not permanent, she whispered. The connection can be severed, but only within the first month, and only through a ritual that requires both parties' consent. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. All this time, he'd been accepting their situation as unchangeable, letting himself grow attached to her because he believed they had no choice. Now, ... Double quotes, why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth. She finally looked at him, her alien eyes bright with unshed tears. Because if we're going to stop Thalon, if we're going to rule together as I've been planning, it should be your choice. Not something forced on you by my desperation. Through their bond, he felt the depth of her fear, not of Thalon or death, but of his rejection. She had grown to care for him as much as he had for her, and the possibility of losing him terrified her more than any physical danger. You're giving me the choice to leave, he said slowly. Yes, and if I choose to stay... Breath caught. Then the bond becomes permanent tomorrow at sunset, unbreakable by any means. Jackson was quiet for a long moment, processing not just her words, but the emotions flowing between them. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a simple mercenary with no ties, no responsibilities beyond his next contract. Now he was being offered a crown, an alien princess, and a war that wasn't his to fight. I need to think, he said finally. The hurt that flashed through their connection was quickly suppressed, but he felt it nonetheless. Of course I'll sleep elsewhere tonight. Zara. He caught her hand as she started to rise. This isn't rejection. This is me taking the choice seriously. If I stay, if I make this bond permanent, I want it to be for the right reasons. She nodded, though he could feel her struggling with the concept. For all her royal education, she had never truly been given a choice in her own life. The idea that he might actively choose her not because he was trapped, but because he wanted to was something she barely dared to hope for. After she left, Jackson sat alone with his thoughts and the strange, empty feeling where her constant presence used to be. Through the reinforced window, he could see maintenance crews working on their ship, and beyond that, the vast emptiness of space that had been his home for so many years. Freedom. He'd fought for it, killed for it, built his entire life around. The concept of answering to no one but himself, and now he was being offered something that humans rarely experienced, a connection so deep that two beings became one. Sharing thoughts, emotions, even dreams. Was it worth giving up everything? He'd been for the chance to become something entirely new. As if summoned by his thoughts, an aide appeared at his door. Captain Reed, Commander Rao requests your presence in the strategy room. We've received intelligence about Thalon's fleet movements. Next few hours were spent in intensive planning. Sessions analyzing Thalon's forces and trying to devise a way to stop him with their limited resources. Through it all, Jackson found himself thinking like a ruler rather than a mercenary, considering not just immediate tactics but long-term consequences for the entire sector. When someone suggested a suicide attack that would cripple Thalon's flagship, Jackson found himself vetoing it not because it wouldn't work, but because the cost and lives was too high. When had he started caring about casualties beyond his own team? The answer came to him as he watched the resistance fighters preparing for battle. Through Zara's memories, he had experienced their hopes, their dreams for a better future. These beings weren't just soldiers, they were people fighting for their homes, their families, their freedom, and Zara was their symbol. Their hope for a leader who would rule with wisdom rather than fear as dawn approached in the artificial day-night. Cycle of the asteroid base, Jackson made his decision. The final confrontation came sooner than expected. Thalon's fleet arrived just as the binary suns were setting on the nearby planet, their combined light painting the asteroid field in shades of gold and crimson. 3 massive dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already charging for a devastating first strike. He found us, Commander Rao announced grimly from the command center. All ships prepare for... Wait, Jackson interrupted, moving to the communication console. Through his bond with Zara, he could feel her confusion and growing hope as she sensed his decision before he voiced it. Open a channel to Thalon's flagship. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the warlord himself. Lon was a massive humanoid, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed with inner fire. When he smiled, it revealed rows of razor-sharp teeth. Princess, he purred, his voice like grinding stone. You've led me quite a chase, but this farce ends now. Surrender, and I might allow some of your followers to live. The farce is your claim to my hand, Zara replied, stepping forward with royal dignity. I am bonded to another, as is my right under ancient law. Lan's laugh shook the communication array. A forced bonding to a human mercenary. The neural patterns were all wrong in the recordings my spies sent. You may fool these desperate fools, but I know the difference between a true bond and a political maneuver. Jackson moved to stand beside Zara, taking her hand. The touch sent their synchronized marks flaring with brilliant light. But more than that, he opened their bond completely, letting every emotion flow freely between them. You're right, he said calmly. The original bond was forced. Gasps arose from the resistance fighters behind them, and Thalan's grin widened. But Jackson continued before anyone could speak. But that was 3 weeks ago. Today I choose her freely. He turned to face Zara fully, cupping her alien face in his hands. Choose this bond, this life, this war. I choose you, Zara Velthes, not because I'm trapped, but because I can't imagine a future without you in it. The marks on their necks exploded with light as the bond transformed. It's becoming something deeper and more complete than ever before. Through their connection, every person in the command center could feel the genuine love flowing between them. Love that had grown from forced proximity into something transcendent. I choose you too, Zara whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Today and always. The light from their bond spread outward, touching every being in the chamber. For a moment, human and alien minds touched, sharing the pure emotion of two. Souls choosing each other against impossible odds. Thalan's roar of rage shattered the moment. Enough. If I cannot have you as a bride, I'll take you as a corpse. All ships, open fire. The first barrage shook the asteroid base, but Jackson was already moving. All fighters launch. Make them pay for every meter. What followed was perhaps the most desperate space battle in the sector's history. The resistance fleet was outnumbered and outgunned. But they fought with the fury of beings protecting their homes and their future. Jackson and Zara flew together in her upgraded ship, their bond allowing them to pilot with impossible precision. Through their connection, they became one entity in two bodies, anticipating each other's moves, covering weaknesses, amplifying strengths. They carved through Thalan's fighter squadrons like a sword of light, their perfect coordination inspiring the entire resistance fleet. But even their skill couldn't overcome the massive firepower advantage. One by one, resistance ships fell until only a handful remained. The base is lost, Commander Rahl transmitted. All surviving ships, retreat to backup coordinates. Zara said firmly, We end this here. She altered course, heading straight for Thalan's flagship. Through their bond, Jackson understood her plan and felt his heart break even as he admired her courage. The antimatter charge is in our cargo bay, he said. You're going to ram his ship. Going to ram his ship, she corrected. I won't ask you to die for my people's freedom, but you don't have to ask. Jackson's hands covered hers on the controls. Where you go, I go. That's what the bond means. They flew toward the massive dreadnought, weaving through defensive fire that grew thicker with every passing second. Their ship's shields failed. Then their hull began taking hits. But still they pressed forward. Princess. Thalan's voice crackled over the communication channel. You would die rather than submit. I would die free rather than live as your slave. Zara replied. Just as they entered ramming range, a new voice cut across all frequencies. All ships. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth's Defense Force, Thalan. You are in violation of 17 interstellar treaties. Surrender immediately. The space around the asteroid field filled with Earth ships, destroyers, cruisers, and a massive carrier that dwarfed even Thalan's flagship. Jackson's distress beacon, activated weeks ago during his initial capture, had finally brought help in. The face of overwhelming force, Thalan's fleet surrendered. The warlord himself was taken into custody, his dreams of empire shattered. Later, as they stood in the gardens of Zara's ancestral palace, watching the reconstruction efforts across the planet's cities, Jackson marveled at the path that had brought them together. Do you ever regret it? Zara asked, her head resting on his shoulder. The choice you made? Through their bond, she felt his contentment, his deep love for her, his satisfaction with Their shared rule of the Netherian sectors. Can I regret the best decision I ever made? She smiled, her alien features radiant with happiness, even if it started with kidnapping, especially because it started with kidnapping. He turned to kiss her, their bond flaring with shared joy. After all, how else would a mercenary end up with a princess? Their laughter echoed through the gardens as binary suns set on their new world. Painting the sky in colors that spoke of infinite possibilities and endless love. The end.